you very much, Mary. Yeah, my name is Ben Kersey. And yeah, I'm the FFA coach, agriculture teacher, culinary teacher at the alternative learning environment. You wear a lot of hats. I'm also a worksite coordinator and just super excited to be here. It was just about a year ago. I was sitting right there going through this little program, through the Garden Gate. I really loved it. At Tesla, met everyone associated with the Master Gardener program. I really fell in love. So I went through the trainee program, and now I'm an intern. So don't hold that against me. But yeah, this material is pretty dense, so we're going to get right through it there. But as an educator, I just want to say something I've never seen in my years of education so far is everyone's looking at me. My God, not a single phone anywhere. So that was probably the main reason why I wanted to give this lecture, because I get to lecture, instead of saying I didn't have to give everybody a pencil, no papers, none of that stuff. So thank you very much. I'm super excited to be here. I'll just get right into it though. So in the 1700s, when greenhouses first came to be, they were limited to the wealthy. Today, with so many options available, almost anyone can have a greenhouse. The options are mind-boggling, multiple types of styles, a variety of building materials, from recycled materials to kits and DIY options. To help maneuver through the choices, it's helped to understand some basics. So a greenhouse can help extend the growing season and increase plant growth and fruit production, and even allow you to grow plants that wouldn't normally survive in our climate. Understanding how the process works can help you get the most out of your greenhouse. First thing to understand before investing in a greenhouse, or if you're acquired on investing in more equipment, is that a greenhouse is a commitment. I got a greenhouse at my home. It's a little detached one. I also have a big greenhouse at the school. And even though that thing's fully automated, it is a lot of work. Some say it's almost like getting a dog or even having kids. Like you're just constantly checking on them, monitoring maintenance. Even the most advanced greenhouses require you to just be working on stuff. So to help improve your luck with the greenhouse, today we're going to be covering some parameters of the residential or hobby greenhouse, going in order with site placement. Obviously, you got to make sure you have a good spot for it, and then what kind you want. So this is a good overview of all that. Some of the basics, including how they work, and then looking at designs and size. So next will be some of the more technical aspects of operating the greenhouse and different options. Throughout, there'll be hopefully some useful tips that you guys will get to get out of this. So how they work. At its core, the warmth of a greenhouse boils down to a balance of design and science. When sunlight enters a greenhouse, it's primarily in the form of visible light. This passes through the transparent glazing like glass or polycarbonate. And once inside, it is absorbed by whatever plants and objects are inside. These objects radiate heat, and the light coming in is converted to heat. Now here is where the science magic happens. The heat comes in as infrared radiation and tries to escape back out. Due to the properties of the greenhouse glazing, it is harder for this infrared radiation to pass back out as it was for the visible light to enter. This heat gets trapped inside, creating a warmer environment. The sun works as a natural heater. As the heat increases in the greenhouse, it rises. Actually, the cold air sinks, and greenhouses generally need some sort of ventilation to manage the heat levels inside. Greenhouses work best if the temperature can remain at an optimal level for its intended use. Without a means of maintaining the temperature, plants can be stressed or killed by either extreme heat or cold. Many greenhouses have vents, which are usually high on the wall or on the roof, to more effectively let the rising hot air out. If the greenhouse doesn't have vents, the doors or flaps in some cases are the means of ventilation. I have just little cuts up on the top, and then the door kind of just prevents like a nice little draft going out. So now the sun goes down. What happens to that warm and cozy space? Small greenhouses by themselves have severe limitations when it comes to heat retention. As mentioned, they could heat up quickly, but they also cool down quickly to the outside ambient temperature within an hour or two when the sun goes down. At my house, I have an outdoor temperature and then I have a greenhouse temperature, and both. And it's amazing how quickly the outside temperature and the greenhouse temperature just come to the same thing, So there are three ways heat is lost from the greenhouse. That through conduction, which is direct movement through structure materials, conductor right there. Leakage is hot air escaping through gaps and doorways. And radiation, radiant energy moving directly through the covering materials. Most heat is lost through conduction, where heat energy is transferred directly through covering materials like your polycarbonate right on top. It's just going to lose it right through there. Leakage of air accounts for the next greatest amount of lost heat. In a well-constructed and maintained structure, as much as 10% of heat loss can be due to leakage. In greenhouses with poorly fitting doors, partially open vents, other gaps, or broken cover materials, significantly more heat can be lost this way. The heat loss through radiation depends on the covering materials. It is often ignored. Glass will not allow much heat to be lost through radiation, though polyethylene film is practically transparent to thermal radiation. Yeah, those little thin things, you don't get much, but if you have a nice thick layer of glass, you're going to be able to keep that heat in a little bit lower. Glass is a lot more expensive, so people use, the polyethylene film. And just an FYI, and I've tested this a lot, the inside of a greenhouse can actually get colder than the outside temperature. If the greenhouse cover is not properly insulated or has leaks, it can lose heat faster than the surrounding air, causing the internal temperature to be lower than the ambient outside temperature. That's pretty wild, and I can attest to that with multiple temperature readings. So a method of retaining the heat through the night is the use of a thermal mass. By using structures or objects that could retain the heat, it could slow down the heat loss. Masonry walls like brick or concrete pavers for flooring can provide thermal mass. One of my coworkers, he has a greenhouse in Lake Cushman, and he's got about 6 big barrels, water barrels that are black that filled up. And he said that really helps out a lot, just keeps a little extra heat, because sometimes just a couple of degrees can keep those plants alive. So anytime a thermal mass will really help. The air temperature may have gone down, but the pavement, the wood, the barrels, all those things can retain some heat. So where to locate the greenhouse? This is probably the most important thing. So knowing that the sun is key, the placement of the greenhouse is best when it is placed where it can capture the most sun. The greenhouse that we utilize up at North Mason School District, first of all, it's probably about half the size of this room. I mean, it's massive. It's a full commercial-sized greenhouse, and it's got full sun the whole day, all day long. And I'm blown away every time I go inside. That's like, going there at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's like, it's still pretty warm. This is great. So that's the most important. It's like, the placement of the greenhouse is key. So as the diagram shows, perfect. Sorry, got excited. So good. Okay. As the diagram shows, the best sitting for the greenhouse is an east-west positioning on the south side of any structure. The smaller ends will be facing the east and the west, and this provides a maximum sun throughout the year and also helps provide beneficial winds in the summer and reduce the exposure to prevailing winter winds, generally coming from the north. Those Alaska cold fronts coming down. In addition, to identify the best placement for the sun, it is also important to consider many other factors. An ideal site for a greenhouse would be well drained, level, and a full exposure to sunlight. My buddy put a greenhouse in, and he built everything from scratch. By scratch, I mean just like found windows and placed up, and he built his old greenhouse, and he was looking great, looking awesome. And I go over to his house just not too long ago during that last storm, and it's just filled with water. So he's digging everything up, making sure he's got better drainage, the little pipes and holes, and we'll go through that there. But that's key, making sure that you're got a good spot, you're not bare slope, that there's drainage, like all these things are just little factors you gotta think of, because the last thing you want to do is waste your time or put it in a bad spot, So the first choice for a greenhouse site should be on the south or southeast side of the house in a sunny location. The east side is the second best location, since it will capture the most November to February sunlight. The next best locations are the southwest and west, and the north side is obviously the least desirable location, especially here. So a greenhouse can be placed where it will be partly shaded during the summer. That's super important. When a reduction in light is a good thing, is it can easily become too hot. Yeah, my greenhouse at home easily in the 110, 120 degrees, and then you just got to pull everything out and just figure something else out there. So be sure the greenhouse is not shaded too heavily, especially during the seasons when the length of daylight is shorter. If it is near trees, take into account the possibility that the tree can fall and mess up your greenhouse as well. Some plants will grow in a greenhouse in any location. However, types of plants which can be grown will be limited if the greenhouse is not placed in the best possible location. If the site is particularly windy, wind protection may be more important than whether the greenhouse runs north and south or east and west. Protect the greenhouse from winds by locating it so existing buildings will sheet it, providing it with a windbreak, hedge, or fence. Zoning. This applies to Mason County only, but before getting or setting up a greenhouse, it's always a good idea to know if if it's legal, or if you're doing your county's zoning codes. Mason County, a greenhouse under 200 square foot is considered a shed, does not require a permit as long as it's freestanding, not attached to a house, and is not plumbed. If it is a larger greenhouse or attached to a house or the desire is to have it plumbed, then a building permit is going to be required. If it is outside of Mason County, then check with the appropriate county building codes. Luckily, mine's attached to my pump house, so it's plumbed and power ready to go, even though it's kind of like a detached, it's just a little, it's not attached to my house, but it's not heated or anything like that. It's always important to know that, you know, you're doing the right thing. So there are two types of greenhouses, attached and detached or freestanding. Let's spend a few minutes talking about the advantages and disadvantages of each. Greenhouses attached to a house are very convenient and have the advantage of being protected on one side. This can help with insulation, meaning better heat regulation. They could also make life easier in terms of accessing water and power. Attached greenhouses are obviously attached to a structure. It could be a house, a garage, or a fence. If it is attached to a permanent building like a house or garage, it will most likely require a building permit and become part of the overall square footage. Again, check with your county. In these cases, the greenhouse will also need a foundation because it needs to be as stable as the building is being attached to. Care needs to be taken during construction of an attached greenhouse to create a barrier to keep moisture and humidity out of the house. Obviously, yeah, if you're going to build a greenhouse right on there, you don't want all that stuff coming on, transferring into your home. So here we go. Cool. Attached greenhouse can be built with or without a foundation. It could be a permanent structure or not. This category runs the gamut of options from a romance novel type structure to be a hard-working hoop house. There's a freestanding greenhouse to meet the needs and aesthetic desires of just about any gardener. Driving through this area, I see every type of example of greenhouse. A lot of hoop houses. A lot of hoop houses in the area. A lot of sheeting, a lot of polyethylene film. That seems to be the best way to go because you can put it up quick, extends your season. You know, you can move them. The attached greenhouses are more likely removable. There's so many options with kits and DIY instructions available. Many price points fit almost any budget. Downside of these is that they might not be quite as accessible to get to. Water and power may become a little bit more complicated. It could be a hassle to take care of because if it's not convenient. Yeah, if you got stuff set up and it's the middle of the rainy season or after a snowfall, how motivated are you going to be out there to go check and water your plants? Speaking from experience, not very most of the time. And the detached greenhouse naturally will just be more costly to heat. So it's just, you know, location where you're going to go, what type of greenhouse, and then like what you want to grow. I really think growing is probably most important. Like, okay, what do you want to do? And then where you want to place it, and then what type would you like to do? And how big should it be? There are several things to consider and figure out what size of greenhouse to get. What is it going to be used for? How much space is needed for the actual number of plants? How many seeds or plants are going to be started? And how much space is needed when the seedlings are transplanted? Will there be benches to hold the plants or raised beds? Some things to consider when thinking about the size of the greenhouse is the space needed for benches, beds, furniture, storage, access, and movement. It's great that I probably like everybody else, you get a greenhouse, you want to maximize it. So you fill it up, you load it up with plants, and then you realize, I don't have any room to do anything in here. So making sure that you got room for benches and sitting down. The slide shows some rule of thumb measurements. Benches are roughly 2 to 2.5 feet deep. This is about as wide as you can be able to reach across to the far side of the bench and work with the plants. It's a good aisleway that allows ease of movement is about 2.5 to 3.5 feet wide. If the greenhouse will be used by one person primarily, a smaller width may be appropriate. But if more people will be in at a time, the wider aisle may make more sense. You have to be able to get in. And I like to hang out in mine. Like, are you going to use it as a sitting area, a meditation spot? Are you going to be just like, you're so proud of your plants, you're just going to want to stare at them all day, like me. So many people have to have a combination greenhouse and escape, you know? If so, consider that a chair is generally 2 feet by 2 feet and a couch can be 3 feet by 6 feet. Don't forget that movement, clearance, storage, everything needs room as well to account for that plan. If by chance you found a great deal on a greenhouse and the size is set, great. Then make a plan considering how the greenhouse will be used and what it will be in it before buying or making the items to fill it up. Ooh, here we go. This is fun. So as was mentioned, there are a lot of types of greenhouses, and we're going to cover some of the most common right now. So the gable style looks as like a kid's first drawing of a house. Straight walls, pitched roof, iconic, very popular. Kits for this style are readily available in a variety of building materials. Price points range from inexpensive, you can just build your own, to very expensive with glass glazing, steel, and brick. Things to keep in mind with this style is snow removal and drip line erosion. Mason County doesn't get a lot of snow each year, but when it does snow, it can be a lot. This style of greenhouse is generally more challenging to get the snow off. While snow serves as an insulator, it blocks light during a time when the days are already getting shorter. But Amy, you might not need to worry about knocking it off if you don't have any plants growing in there. So really knowing what you're going to use it for is key. Another thing, the drip line off of the roof may require some additional drainage to eliminate erosion. It just comes off. The last thing you want is a big ditch right by your greenhouse. So take a look at the example on the right. That one, it's kind of hard to see, but that is an example of reusing materials. It's made out of 2-liter plastic bottles with a simple wood framing. Yeah. The Lewis County Master Recyclers have made a similar structure. And if anyone isn't interested, we can get the instructions and the brochures to you. Oh, that was really cool. I grew up in Southern California. We would go to Knott's Berry Farm, and they had like little bottle buildings, like the glass bottles and the concrete. And I thought that was always the kind of thing. And those work real well too. Just let the light in and keep the heat in, let the light in. So the Gothic style typically is anything that comes to a pointed arch and is not rounded. This is perhaps a more utilitarian style but can be also aesthetically pleasing depending on the materials used, and they look cool. It leads itself to the plastic glazing or any flexible glazing as the structure requires it to bend for the curvature of the sides. It comes in kit form. It could also be made with DIY instructions found in many places online. It is very good in snowy conditions as it sheds snow easily, important because of the wet and heavy snow that we get here in Pacific Northwest. When the sides are not perpendicular, as is the case for many models, it requires bracing to stabilize the base. Yeah, you got to make sure that it's secured. Victorian styles, these are the most expensive and most decorative styles of greenhouses. They're available in kits, and you can find these at vendors of the Northwest, at the Northwest Flower and Garden Show every year, usually with many envious gardeners standing in awe. These go back to the origins of the greenhouse in England and Europe. If you want your own orangery, this is your style. These tend to be expensive, require more maintenance because they have like little vents and stuff that pop up. They're good. Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to them. They look pretty. They just cost more money. No big deal. Styles, quinset, or hoop house. So this style is used by many commercial growers, and it's probably the dominant one that we have here in Mason County. The hoop house style. These are inexpensive and easy to build. They're a cost-effective way to build a greenhouse, especially if aesthetics aren't an issue. They always are an issue in my house. So they are functional, stable when properly anchored, and can shed snow relatively easy. They can also be moved quite easily. Mason County Master Gardeners have a hoop house at Catalyst Park. Each spring it is used for the plant sale in the late winter, early spring. The plastic sheeting is attached and then later removed for the fall and winter. Moving the plastic sheeting each year increases its lifespan. Plastic sheeting is generally good for 3 to 5 years if left on year round. Disadvantage of this type is that the types of ventilation may be limited to the door only. If you're wrapping the whole thing up in plastic, you're not going to get much airflow, probably just on the front end, which could be fine. Also, the glaze on these types may not be transparent, so you might not get as much light, heat. You got to make sure you get those clear as plastic as you can, but sometimes they're just translucent. The lean-to, another really popular one. The last style is the lean-to or the single slope. These are often used for the attached type, but could also be freestanding. I see a lot of these around also. They come in kit form. It can be made out of many different materials. If they're attached, the suggestions previously stated apply. One additional point on attached is that there may be a need to check the structural capacity for any snow load that may come from the roof of the house. That makes sense. If you got it right there and the snow's coming down on it, you want to make sure that it could hold all that weight. Again, it isn't the frequency of the snow, but when it happens, it really happens. So greenhouses are not as structurally sound as a home and garage. For the detached type, they're a practical style, especially if the slope is decent, we'll shed that heavy Pacific Northwest. So they generally have only a single drip line to worry about the erosion. And what do you want to grow? Now you know where you want to put it in the greenhouse. Now, what plants are we going to put in there? What do we want to do with this? Is it more like a large cold frame to keep plants overwintered? Or on the other hand, end of the spectrum, a tropical greenhouse that you're going to be heating in the winter and cooling in the summer to have exotic plants? Heating your greenhouse over the winter is not as cheap as it sounds. It costs a lot of money. We got a couple big, massive propane tanks that we use for heating those, and I'm blown away at how often that propane tank comes to fill it up. There are some other advantages, like I've been seeing some heat pumps going out there that could be a little bit more efficient, but then you got to get an electrician and big power lines. It just really ups the cost. So let's talk about the cool greenhouse. Cool greenhouse can be considered a glorified and larger cold frame. In our zone, it may not need any additional heat. It may have enough passive solar in the greenhouse to keep it above freezing. If it gets above freezing, it can be used to overwinter some plants and grow cold weather vegetables like spinach. Even without additional heat, it can be used to start spring and summer plants early and might be able to extend growing into the shoulder season, spring and fall. I have a cool greenhouse. I typically use mine to get the seeds going at the beginning of the year. And then once summer hits, I pull everything out. And then when fall hits, I put everything back in there. So my greenhouse, it doesn't really have much in there during the summer, just because I can't get a way to drop that heat from hundreds, So last thing I want to do is put a lot of good plants in there and have them die because of the heat. That happens. So the temperate greenhouse is just a little bit warmer. So it needs the nighttime temperatures to be around 40. This is going to need additional heat sources like electric heat. With the additional heat will be the requirement to have ventilation as well, because it will heat up during the winter. And yeah, excess heat coming in, water or cold air on the outside, you can get moisture buildup. So you got to have air flowing out. If you don't have air flowing out, you're going to have a warm, moldy situation. Nobody wants anything like that. Not for your plants. So at these temperatures, more tender plants can survive the winter. They may not flourish or grow, but they will stay alive. So cool, temperate, now warm. So with the greenhouse, the warm is 55 to 60 degrees at night. With the greenhouse kept at these temperatures, you can grow citrus trees, ornamentals, non-hardy plants will not just survive, but can bloom and grow. Bulbs, after having their cold exposure, can be brought in the greenhouse to bloom early. If you got a warm greenhouse, that's how you start getting daffodils and tulips in off-season and stuff. You can get them in January or whatever. But obviously, more money for heat sources and for ventilation. So those wanting to grow exotic, they only get into the tropical greenhouse. We're at 60 to 70 degrees at night, and that's warm. I wish it was that right now. Those wanting to grow exotic plants would need to keep the greenhouse at around 60 to 70. The tropical greenhouse can grow those plants found in much warmer climates. This is your palms, your citrus, everything that would be awesome to have year round. To make it more efficient and keep costs down, the greenhouse is going to have much more insulation. It's going to need have more insulated glazing, double or triple, along with insulated floors and walls. This is an expensive proposition for this type of greenhouse. The attached type may make more sense, as it can gain the advantage of the heat from the house. I see several of these type tropical things attached to homes. Looking at Hood Canal, I'll see some of them there, and then they're just utilizing their home heat to heat their greenhouse, which is probably can be pretty efficient way there. But you got to keep them warm all the time. So in talking with greenhouse gardeners, they sometimes start off with grand plans to grow vegetables and plants throughout the year. Those plans are often met with the reality of paying the electric bills to keep the greenhouse at the appropriate temperature has a dampening impact on those plants. The warmer the temperature, the more complex the system needs. You're keeping something at 60 to 70 degrees consistent year round. 60 to 7 is great in the summer or great in the winter when you're bringing it up. But when summertime hits, now you got to cool that off. So it's just this balance of making sure everything is working right there. And it's just a lot. I mean, even with our big, fully massive system, it's too much to try to keep it heated to 70 degrees throughout the year, But you can, absolutely. So greenhouse material options. There are a number of options for materials to build a greenhouse. Each of the material types have pros and cons, just like life. Not only is it a good idea to understand each of the building materials, but it's also a good idea to understand how they work in concert with each other. Materials react differently to heat, cold, humidity, and moisture, and the building needs to accommodate this. So wood, steel, aluminum, PVC, different glazing materials. So with wood framing, wood is commonly used to build greenhouses. It's readily available and doesn't generally require special tools. Wood-based kits are also readily available. One of the photos in the presentation is a wood greenhouse kit from Costco. Internet is full of wood-based greenhouse plans. Many of these are very simple to construct if you know how to handle wood. Wood provides a heavy, sturdy structure that can often withstand more of the elements. When building with wood, attention needs to be paid to the connections with acrylic and glass. Wood expands and contracts. the wood needs to be allowed to expand and contract. To make wood structures longer lasting, they do need interior and exterior maintenance. Wood and water doesn't make for a lasting relationship, so the wood will require waterproofing and sealants to keep it long lasting, or you got to get pressure treated. Most of the stuff that I use is all pressure treated, painted pressure treated, and it's sealed. It shouldn't mold up if it has that. Aluminum kits. Many of the greenhouse kits come with aluminum framing, which is powder coated or anodized, should be lower maintenance. These come hopefully with pre-cut pieces that fit together. You can find these on Amazon. These are lighter weight, makes them easier to put up. They will need to be attached to a base or an anchor so they don't blow away in high winds. The windstorm that we had last week would probably blow away an aluminum greenhouse. Definitely need to make sure it's anchored so it doesn't get damaged. And sometimes it costs a little bit more. Steel greenhouses are like aluminum in that they typically come in a kit form with pre-cut pieces that hopefully fit together without much trouble. Steel is heavier than aluminum, so may be a bit more difficult to set up, but it is more sturdy to withstand the elements. It is possible to have a larger greenhouse, longer span length with steel, but it does come with a higher cost per foot. Like aluminum, it is virtually maintenance free if it is anodized and powder coated. I mean, unless you got a lot of steel lying around, it's just spendy, heavy. It lasts forever, but it's just expensive. Most people go the aluminum wood frame route just for cost. Or this one actually, PVC. So PVC polyvinyl chloride is an inexpensive option. It has the advantage of being flexible, so it can be made for use for hoop houses or Gothic styles, as well as more straight lines. It is low maintenance and generally used with plastic shading. PVC greenhouse is the least likely to add aesthetic value to your property. You put one of those up, you're probably not going to double your home value. But that's okay, because you're going to get double your plants. Because they mostly are used with plastic sheeting, they will have lower transparency, light, and therefore heat of the greenhouse. PVC is very lightweight, so it is the least likely to withstand the elements like snow and wind. It may not survive a heavy snowstorm or will require additional anchoring to keep in place. The great about it is when the season's done at the end, just take it apart, roll it up, and then you don't have to worry about it because it's not there anymore. And then you're going to want to, every year you switch it up a little bit. If you can move your greenhouse, it's like, oh, this worked really good. Well, maybe it might work a little bit better somewhere else. Or, you're always, every year you're learning, you're iterating, you're changing it up. So glazing. There are many, many options for glazing. If using a kit, it will come with the glazing. Hooray. If the greenhouse is being built from scratch, there are options to choose from and pros and cons for each of the material. The chart shows the light transmission of each type of material and differentiates between some of the options within a category. A rule of thumb used by researchers is that 1% increase in light equals to 1% increase in plant growth. This is true for fall, winter, and spring, especially on cloudy days. But in summer, there's usually enough adequate sunlight to keep levels above that saturation point. Some other construction options are to use recycled materials. That's the best way. If you can get free stuff, recycled things, windows, estate sales, you could always find. My buddy loves scavenging windows, so he's got 100 different windows that he just puts all together, and it's cool, and it gives things like a unique looking style, and it's cheaper, and you're reusing stuff, so that's just really, really cool. Some other options are, reuse building materials, old windows, salvaged lumber, 2-liter bottles, concrete blocks or pavers. All those are great. Construction considerations, frame and benches, painted white. Paint everything white if you can, paint everything white that you want reflected. Your benches, your tables. If you have bucket or watering things, you want those black to absorb more heat. But if everything's white, it's going to be bouncing that light. It's going to be reflected to the plants. Hanging baskets like plant supports, have some pipes running so you can put those hanging baskets up there. Those typically need a lot of good light and can also use to shade other plants underneath them, some things that might get a little too heated up. Root zone heating systems, you got a little heat pad or pipe radiation, could often be used to substitute for some overhead radiation in unit heaters. Shade energy screens, select those that have the smallest storage footprint. In the summer, when I first moved into my house, I was like, why is there all this sheeting on my greenhouse? I want that sun coming in. And so after I ripped it all out, I realized, that's to protect the greenhouse from getting too hot. So you live, you learn. Water and electric utilities can often be placed along the wall or post lines of the gutter less than shade. Lighting fixtures, if there's adequate height, consider using a fewer numbers of larger watering fixtures. So, and then we'll just quickly talk a little bit more about glazing selection. Choose a material that has a long life, a slow rate of degradation. Clean glazing, wash in the fall to remove exterior shading, dirt and smog, just gross stuff. This can increase, not wipe, if you clean your windows, you're gonna get better light transmission. But who wants to go up there and climb up on a window? You have the little hose sprayers work real well. The Windex things, you get it, just clean it off. You know, you might not be safe to go and wipe it all down, but at least in the fall, getting everything, or in the spring again, you know, they say that just cleaning the dust off can increase light transmission by 5% or more. That 5% or more, it creates a 5% in growth. So like every little thing just helps, you know. Although the light transmission of the glazing is an important consideration when building a new greenhouse, there are many other factors to be considered that can have a greater effect. Water. Plan for water. Water is obviously a key element. It is important to consider where the water will come from when sitting in the greenhouse. It probably goes without saying that you don't want to use hand water. Bring a watering can by watering can for your greenhouse. It's just, I mean, you got to bring it in. The door is closing on you. You bring, you know, ideally you want to have something in the system ready to go. Using hoses from a house or garage is considered a temporary solution. Yeah, just run a 50-foot hose in there. You won't be able to close your door, but at least you got something going. You know? It's the simplest mode from building's perspective. Getting water to the greenhouse may require more management. It's also least expensive. And you run a hose, you got water. The downside of using hoses is just that sometimes, you know, they don't work well in winter's cold temperatures. They split, they leak, you're pulling them, they kink, you know, you're readjusting, you're re-rolling, you got to roll it up so it doesn't kink over itself. Kind of a pain. However, it is key that the water hose and bib be shut off in the wintertime when it's not used, particularly if it were left on, the hose splits, it could flood the greenhouse without the proper ventilation, then you start getting mold. So there's a lot of downsides. The greenhouse gets mold inside, it's really tough to get it out. So the other downside is that you have to deal with the long hose. But what if you just permanent plumbed it? The permanent plumb solution is to bring domestic water to the greenhouse for water. This changes the zoning of the structure, so there might be a permitting process to deal with along with costs. Depending on how much you use the greenhouse and during that time of year, these disadvantages may be worth it for the convenience that having accessible water brings. I mean, you got an indoor plumb, the other going to talk about irrigation. Indoor, having it plumbed means you can set up your irrigation, you have everything on it. That's great. Anytime you could save yourself some time or maintenance or check-in, especially watering, then you could just spend more time, you know, doing just giving the plant individually what's it need. You're going to be way ahead of yourself. You could also use rain barrels with a gravity system. That's the great way to go. Put them right in there. Then you get some little heat mass, and you're pulling some water from your roof. Rutgers University has some great information on building and installing rain barrels for home use. Rain barrels will most likely not replace the need for hose or plumbed water, but will augment. With the cost of water these days, it's a good idea to use free water when you can. A couple of tips for rain barrels to avoid getting algae is paint them black. Algae needs photosynthesis to grow, and a black color barrel will impede the light's ability to get in. Yeah, if you have a clear thing, it will turn green pretty fast. Second step is to make sure the barrels have a very tight seal, just like your clay pots. Make sure that there's nowhere where little mosquitoes and larvae can get in. Mosquitoes love standing water. If they appear, you know, you're going to have them. You can put a mosquito dunk in there to clear out the larva without adding any harmful chemicals. Those just little like pad-looking things. Yeah, little discs, exactly. Irrigation systems. I'll briefly go over this because we're going to have a little talk about it. So drip irrigation can get the water to the plant more effectively by getting the water close to soil and roots. Systems can be installed fairly inexpensively, but there's a cost involved. There are different types of systems available for pots versus beds. These can be put on timers, but they are maybe wasting water if timing isn't checked. That's as much as I'm going to say because we got another irrigation system right behind me, and she's going to really fill you in on all the good stuff there. Drainage, like I was talking about before, what goes up must come down. That water that comes in must go out. Drainage is important in greenhouse to moderate the humidity of the environment and to keep the plants healthy. That's why a lot of temperature gauges have moisture, humidity in there, right there too. Mine is a little smiley face and frowny face. If the humidity gets too high, it turns into a frowny face. So that's pretty easy to tell. So water is essential for plant growth, but a greenhouse overwatering or poor damage can lead to waterlogging, just like anywhere, right? A condition where the soil becomes overly saturated, depriving roots of oxygen and leading to root rot. It is one of the most common issues that greenhouse gardeners face, especially in raised beds or container setups. So to avoid excess water and heat in a closed environment can lead to mold. To avoid this, make sure the greenhouse can get rid of excess water. If the floor doesn't drain with the gravel base, then consider putting drains in that floor to the outside. There are multiple types of drainage systems available, from underground pipes that daylight the water out, or French drains to trench systems with permeable floor covering. What we got at the school greenhouse, we got about 6 inches of rock. That's what they put it on. They poured a little frame around for the greenhouse itself, and they just got a bunch of rock, and we've never noticed any issues with drainage or anything, because it just has somewhere to go. At my personal one at my house, I have it's on 2x6 wood, and then that's on rock too, and it just seems to just flow right out. My gutter does have an issue. I have been noticing a little ditch forming off the side, so I'm going to need to probably just run that gutter a little bit further. So to avoid making the mistake, make sure the greenhouse can get rid of excess water. Where it doesn't have drains with a gravel base, consider putting in a drain to the outside. Multiple types of drainage systems are available, from underground pipes that run the water out, French drains. This one right here, that's a good one. You got your little drain, you put that in, it's just going to pull, it's just going to direct the water out. That's called the French drain. Can be used with the gravel or other non-permanent flooring. It's a porous pipe that absorbs the water and sends it outside. The trench system, is shown in the bottom photo, is also quite effective. Can be used when putting in a concrete floor. Power. Yes. Many greenhouses used as season extenders may not need power, but even the spring or fall ventilation is going to be required, and possibly fans. Running fans in your greenhouse is a great thing. It gets the bugs from landing. It's just get more airflow. Mold and powdery mildew and bugs and stuff, like, they just have a tougher time when there's at least air moving, if nothing else. If nothing else, put a fan in there to move, if you could do the power. Additionally, if you want light, either work lights or plant lights, there's growing lights have really dropped a lot in cost. So you can get some really good LED lights that'll just, like the sun in your greenhouse, that'll run off a simple plug. In the past, there would be 20 amp systems that, like, you would have to get a 220 volt, bigger plug there. But these LEDs, like, they work great. I got a handful of them. Those little aero gardens, you ever see those, like little hydroponic systems? They have little LED things. But if you got a big one for your greenhouse, you can really get some good growth out of them. But the more complex the greenhouse becomes, the greater need you're going to have it wired for electricity. Another option is solar power, but solar power involves, you're going to need a battery. You're going to need a way to transmit. You got to make sure that there's sun. If you have it on the roof, now the sun might not be coming in for your greenhouse. So there's just a number of things to consider. But fans don't use too much power, but lights use a lot more. But whatever option is chosen, if electricity is used in the greenhouse, have a backup electricity source. Last thing you want is something to get tripped or unplugged, and then cold will kill. So then you go, oh, I'm going to go check on my plants, and if it drops down below freezing, they could all die. So don't go through all that effort to have it not be successful. So light, shorter winter days will require additional light. Many greenhouses can benefit from supplemental lighting, especially at times of the year. We're starting to get lighter in the morning now, but not by much. So if you're trying to grow vegetables in Western Washington in the winter, some sort of grow lights can help. Fluorescents are effective for seed startings and greens. They're probably not used here unless the greenhouse is not in an ideal location. I think I saw a lot of those at Catalyst Park, just tons of the fluorescents there, and underneath the seed mats. Yeah, so that's what they use. It's cheap, it's ready to go, and it's even cheaper than the LEDs. So. And they don't need, you can talk about wavelengths and stuff as the visible light, but the seedlings don't need a ton. You probably wouldn't want to grow a full-size plant underneath fluorescents, because it just don't get the amperage, the power, the watt, the wavelengths that you would from a bigger LED lamp. So in general, you'll need more intense light for vegetables than for greens and herbs. That just makes sense. Your tomato needs a lot more photosynthesis energy than your romaine lettuce or your herbs. Heats. So yeah, there's those barrels. So that's not my coworker's house, but that's a perfect example of what it is. Many options for heating the greenhouse using electricity with different uses and varying costs. Today we'll just focus on passive or thermal heating options. As I mentioned earlier, thermal energy can be used to keep the greenhouse warmer without using electric heaters. Any concrete or brick used in the greenhouse for flooring or for walls will help retain heat and slow the cool down overnight. Barrels or jugs full of water will also absorb heat, especially if they're painted black. The more of these barrels and jugs used, the more heat that is stored, the warmer the greenhouse. It's just that, ambient heat warming up. For seed starting, heat mats are your ideal. They heat. These don't have to be specific gardening mats, but they can be the personal heating pads as well. This puts the heat right at the root zone, right where it needs to go. Seed mats for seedlings. It's right in the name, so those work really, really well. And they're a lot more efficient than just having like an overhead heater or a different type of heater. Any type of heating system used in the greenhouse and used in a home can be used in the greenhouse. Powered by electric, gas, propane. It can be built to the floor, under the benches, forced air, or standalone. Be careful of unanchored heaters as they can be a fire hazard because they can tip over. One note from another greenhouse gardeners is to weigh the cost of heating the greenhouse with the benefits. Some have found that using electric heater sources over the winter just isn't worth the increased electric bill. If you're spending $300-400 a month on power and you're only producing $50 worth of plants, what are we getting here? So you want to make sure you're efficient. You're not just spending a lot of money to heating it and not getting a lot of results out of it. So that's the main disadvantage. A greenhouse acts much like a car does out in the sun. If the doors and windows of the car are kept shut, it heats up very quickly and can exceed the outside temperature. Even during cold weather, a greenhouse can get too warm on bright sunny days, just like your car. Ventilation is crucial to the success of the greenhouse. Equipment should be built into the greenhouse to control temperatures and humidity in all seasons. If the vents are hand operated, it's just more maintenance, but it's important to do frequent temperature checks. You might want to invest in a thermometer system that sends temperature readings to your phone. That would be great. Or you just get a bunch of thermostats and just check them all the time. You want to get it to your phone, that's great. If you want to just go look at them, no matter what, so you want to make sure that if your vents need to be opened or closed when you do it. Automatic ventilation eliminates manual work and is the best way to cool a greenhouse. If the greenhouse has a roof or side vent, a thermostat and electric motor will open and close those vents. Those don't need very much power just to open or close the ventilation. There are some systems with temperature-sensitive hydraulic pistons that can be used to open and close the vents. And since they are often automated ventilation without relying on electricity, proper ventilation can be maintained even during electrical outages. So in addition to cooling the greenhouse, this change of air improves growing conditions. Responding to this air transfer, this thermostat will turn off and on to keep desired temperatures for plants. That's the type we have at our commercial greenhouse. The whole three of the sides have little louvers that pop up. Once it starts getting too hot, those things just automatically open, and it's like amazing. Like you hear the greenhouse, it's cold, and all of a sudden, all the little louvers open up. It's like, okay, I guess it's 70 degrees, and then they'll run those things out, cool it down. I mean, plants grow in a range of temperatures, and the smaller you can make that range, the better your plants will grow. Insects, disease, and critters. Ugh. Being proactive can help to avoid pests and disease in the greenhouse. Keep the greenhouse clean and stay on top of examining the contents. Healthy plants are less likely to have problems, know their light, water, and fertilizer needs. Pay attention to the plants, benches, and anything else inside. Once you get a plant, I mean, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of pain, something like that. If you make sure you're feeding the plants, they're looking good. If you start seeing something, be vigilant about quarantining. If you're bringing stuff in, someone's like, oh, I got this great plant. I had a buddy one time, oh, I got this great plant. And we brought it into our greenhouse, and I didn't look very close, but it was loaded with spider mites. So spider mites just took over everything, and we just basically had to destroy. Some critters are just impossible to get rid of. So they have no choice but to tear everything down, bleach the walls, clean it up. That's a pain. So try to avoid that, and make sure any garbage can, just don't leave any trash or anything that's going to attract little bugs and critters. Chances are the greenhouse is cozier than the outdoors, so they're going to want to figure out a way to get in there. Keep the greenhouse closed and secure, add screens if possible, remove any attractant food source. Yes, absolutely. You will get mice and rats and stuff if you like, oh, we've got some great tomatoes, you leave them sitting in there, it will attract the animals as well. Another rule of thumb is if there's a problem in the garden outside of the greenhouse, check the greenhouse for the same problem. Be vigilant, check plants for fungus and diseases, and check the WSU Pest Management Guide with the best approach. Or the real best approach is check in with the master gardener at one of our plant clinics. That's the best way, right? Tips. So if you're thinking about getting a greenhouse, make a plan for how it is to be used, how much you want to grow, and how much you're willing to invest in both time and money. Really be intentional about that. I just kind of blew everything. I was like, oh, I'm going to grow everything. I'm willing to invest whatever it takes, and my time is that plant's time. And then summer comes and it's like, sorry, I can't do anything. I'm taking care of my plants in my greenhouse. So you got even though you love it, you love gardening, too much of it could be a little excessive too. So regular monitoring and maintenance is key to keeping your greenhouse in good condition. Keep notes. We had the through the garden gate, they had the year book. That was awesome. I took extensive notes of what I did, and the Master Garden had a lot of stuff like what they recommend putting in there, and that was a really huge, great resource for me. I think it was a two-year book too, so I'm using it again. That was good. Big little notes, temperatures, what things did. That's all super important. Are you having pest issues? What did you do to get rid of humidity or temperature or cleaning your equipment? Preventive care can extend the life of your greenhouse and reduce the risk of an unexpected failure. So given that the greenhouse has limited space, wait to buy any accessory until knowing how it fits in with the greenhouse it's going to be used. Do the homework on accessories and systems. Yeah, like with Amazon, you just start clicking away, and next thing you know, I got 300 greenhouse items and I only got room for 50 of them. So don't overdo it. Use both an inside and outside thermometers to understand your environment. We all have little microclimates at our home here. So again, your accurate temperature for where you are is super important. Keep it tidy. Try not to have any tripping or safety hazards. Keeping it clean is just good practice for growing. Make a plan for regular cleaning, including all the services inside. When you're transplanting plants, make sure you little bit extra stuff. Wash your pots out. Stuff like that, just make sure everything's clean. Clean your glazing in the fall to increase the amount of light during the months with shorter days. Check the greenhouse regularly, even when not using it. Like the winter months, I got stuff in there and I have a little mold issue. So it's okay, let's open everything up. Let's get some good air. Let's let that chance for it to drop down. There's a lot of information online, but make sure that it is a reliable source. There are great publications from a variety of universities about home greenhouses. Oklahoma State University, Clemson University, Georgia University of New Hampshire, and WSU and Master Gardener Program all have great information. If you're here, hopefully you're going to talk to someone here, one of us, one of your Mason County Master Gardeners, and not just go to Oklahoma State University and talk to them because, well, they're way over there. We're growing plants here. So, many greenhouse gardeners find that the way they use their greenhouse changes over time as they try new techniques and uses, and their available time changes. The greenhouse is a commitment, but can be very rewarding. It is. It's great, but it's like a little dog or something. And that's that. Sources, we have additional materials.